Hello guys, it's Kat and I'm back today for my Pan That Palette update. Oh, it's late and I don't know what's going on. I have made some progress and I've made some oopsie daisies and I've made some additions and I've got really messy hands. Ugh, gross. So last month, I believe I was talking about wanting to potentially add in some mini palettes just to add some more variety and interest into this project because if you are new here, this is a project where I'm trying to pan and use up 2 eyeshadow palettes and 2 face palettes, but I have added in 2 mini palettes just to spice things up a little bit. And I have enjoyed the additions. So I've been using them throughout the month. I've been seeing if I want to continue on with them and I do enjoy them. So let's start with the thing that is least interesting, and it is my Laura Mercier Illuminating Fall in Love Face Illuminator collection. This is a 4-pan highlighter palette and I mainly use these two. So they're the colors that I like the most. They're the ones that suit my skin tone the most. I am wearing the gold today. That's what I've got going on. These are a baked formula, but what I like about them, so it's that sort of baked gelée formula, which is quite firm, but it's really, really beautiful with a little bit of a firmer brush. You pick it up and you buff it into the skin. Gives this beautiful glow. It looks really sort of healthy and glowy and natural without it looking too powdery because it doesn't give a powdery finish. So I really like this formula. I think it's really nice. Again, they're the ones that I've been using the most. So those are the pans that I've probably seen most progress on. I do want to mention that last month, this one fell out when I was filming and I was just going to leave it. I was like, I don't care. It's the bronze. If I'm going to use this, it's going to be as an eyeshadow. But since I'm panning other eyeshadows, I tend to neglect it. Now, there was someone in the comments that mentioned that a way to fix these is to use lash glue to stick it back in. And I was like, I don't need to do that because if it breaks and crumbles, I don't care. Look, I'm trying to get rid of this palette. I'm trying to use it up. I don't really care. But then I realized that I store these in a tub and they sort of, move around a bit. And I thought, look, this is going to be a mess. It's just going to cause a headache. So I actually did glue this in with lash glue as per the suggestion in the comments. So if you made that suggestion, thank you. I took it, it worked. The only problem with that tip that I can foresee is that if you were going to use up the product and hit the bottom, you're going to hit glue, but realistically, it's not that big a deal. So yeah, I've glued that in, which is good. And I'll have progress shots on the screen of where this was at last month versus this month. Like I said, I have been using it. I have pretty much entirely worn down that design, that sort of, it's got that sort of silk looking folded wavy effect on the pan, and I've completely worn those down, but I'm not sure if you can see some great progress from month to month. The next face palette, there's going to be some changes here, and there's going to be some changes after this video. I'll try to include some photos, but this Smashbox Crush on Blush palette, I have been using this consistently, and I'll try to be gentle. Hopefully you can see I actually broke the highlighter. Now, look, instead of me tilting this up and explaining how it's broken, I'll have photos on the screen so it's a bit easier to see. Essentially what happened was I did use this until it hit the side of the pan. So I believe it was the top or the bottom, I'm not sure. Hit the side of the pan, so I was using it quite a lot. The technique that I realized that is really good for this, because this is one of those powdery sort of quite heavy looking highlighters, and because it looks a little bit frosty on me because it's quite light and cool toned, which looks a little bit jarring on my skin. So I prefer something that's a little bit more blended in, something that looks a little bit more glowy. This sort of looked like a strip of like silver. I don't know if you can see that. Wasn't the best. So what I actually figured out is a really good technique to use this is actually put quite a lot on your brush and then tap your brush off like really heavily. Like say this is my brush and I've gone, yep, picked up some product. I'm like, tap off most of it and then buff it in, and it makes a really nice highlight effect. So I was going through this highlight at a much faster rate than I have previously because I was just tapping a lot of it off to get a more natural, subtle effect. And that's how I hit the top of the pan or the bottom of the pan, whatever, the side of the pan, and it ended up breaking apart. So once you hit the side of a pan, often what happens is the structure becomes quite weak and it can sort of crumble, and that's what happened here. So I have been continuing using it, so I'll just tap my brush in really slightly and use it as like a loose highlighter. But what I do want to do is break it apart, repress it into the middle of the pan and keep using it. Now, there is a lot of progress on the bronzer. You'll see that I've been going quite heavy-handed with the bronzer. Not quite, I've just been using it a lot. And again, I'm at a point where this is hard to pick up because it's just around the rim. And whenever I put my sort of bronzer brush around the rim, I pick up a bit of the highlighter, I pick up a bit of the blush to the side of it. So I also want to repress this. So what I'll do is I'll have photos of this repressed. After I finish this, I will put some isopropyl alcohol on it, press it down, and I'll have a photo on the screen so we know what to compare it to next month check-in. The only other progress on this is that peachy blush. So the one in the right hand top corner. I have been using it quite a lot. There is a nice dent. I don't know if it's a lot bigger than last month, but I have been using it like as my only blush. So I hope I'm seeing progress because I've been using it a lot. All right, now on to my eyeshadow palettes. Now I've got the Lorac Pro 1 and 2 that I'm trying to hit pan on. My goal is to hit pan on at least 12 shades over the 2 palettes. Ideally, I want to use up some shades completely. If I can use up, like if I can hit pan on more shades, I'd be happy. But this is just like a last hurrah. I quite like this formula. It's a nice sort of basic nude palettes, but I don't love them enough to want to keep them around. They're getting old, so I want to see how much I can use them this year before I get rid of them. So I don't need them completely gone. I'm not going to be rocking an all black eyeshadow look just to use up the 2 blacks in these palettes. Like, it's not going to happen. But if I can use as much as I can this year, that's my goal. So let's start with the Pro 1. All right, there is a new sneaky pan here. So it's actually light bronze. So this one down here. Last month, this was just a nice dent. It was the one that I was expecting to hit pan on because it had the biggest dent. Now, I think the next one I'm expecting is maybe Pewter, which is a nice dark brown. I've actually discovered that, and I'm wearing it today on my eyes. I'm wearing this palette today. I put this on like 10 hours ago, so it's looking a bit faded at the moment. But a shade that I really love and I want to focus on a little bit more is Garnet. This is one that I don't think I've used at all this year, but now that it's autumn and I'm wearing a lot of sort of browns and, you know, cardigans and jumpers and stuff. This is a really beautiful shade. So today I'm pairing it with gold, so just to sort of brighten it a little bit. And I've also been using this shade in the crease, and I've been mixing it a little bit with light brown because this actually does apply quite dark. So I'm trying to use these two, and I'm trying to use the gold and Garnet. I definitely think Pewter is going to be the next one I hit pan on because it's got the biggest dent, but it's not a shade that I'm interested in at the moment. So even though that's the smartest one to keep using to see progress, I sort of am gravitating towards this one because it's really pretty. So it's quite dark. It's a beautiful sort of reddy coppery shade, and it works beautifully with the gold. So that's my new favorite look that I'm probably going to be rocking quite a lot. Ooh, potentially more exciting. I've actually made some nice progress on my number 2. So last month there was a big dent in Cool Grey. Now I have actually used this a couple of times in my eyebrows just to put a little bit of powder through. It actually works really nicely because this sort of browny taupey grey works nice as, yeah, a cool toned brown brow product. So that's sort of how I started focusing on that little corner. And then I have also been using this. There's another shade that I'll be talking about soon, and it's like a taupey, silvery, purpley kind of shade. And this is a really nice one to just deepen like the outer corner or the lower lash line. So that's also how I've been using that. And then also Mocha is one that I was predicting that I would hit pan on, and I've got a tiny bit of pan on that. It's a really beautiful brown shade. It's the kind of shade that I'll just throw on really quickly as a sort of one and done eyeshadow look. So I think I will be seeing that pan get bigger and bigger over time because it's a really quick, easy look. And probably also the only other thing to note is the shade Buff is getting a lot bigger because it's a really good one to set my base or to blend out and sort of diffuse an eyeshadow look. So that one is probably the one I will use the pan up of fastest. I honestly, okay, no, I was gonna say I honestly don't see any other shades that I could hit pan on in the next month, but I do think if I focus on Nectar, so this peachy matte shade, I feel like that one is a contender for this palette. All the other shades are pretty flat, so I've got to start focusing a little bit more on this, or just go balls to the wall and focus a lot on the Pro one. I don't know, we'll see what happens, but I want to at least try to hit pan on one shade a month. The thing that is going to make that hard is I've decided to introduce 2 new mini palettes just to spice things up a little bit. So the one that I was talking about that I've been using with that cool grey, is that what it's called? Yeah, cool grey, is this little mini palette from MAC. This is the Fabulous 3 Deluxe Pearlfusion Shadow. So it's a 3-pan palette, which, could you call that a palette? I don't know. It's a trio. It sort of looks like a palette, but it essentially has like a satin cream shade. So this is sort of the same shade as Buff in the Lorac 2, but that one's matte. This one has a little bit of iridescence to it. So when you do put it on, it does catch the light as a little like, almost, there you go, it's there. So it does catch the light. So it's not something you can use just to set your base, or you can, and I have, but it does add a brightness to the eye. So yeah, that one's an interesting one. Because these are so thin, I feel like I can hit pan on them fairly quickly because they're long and thin. But these do contain 2 grams overall. So they're not small eyeshadows, but they're not massive. Big eyeshadows contain 2 grams just in the one eyeshadow, so over 3 is fairly easy. The shades that I like the most out of these are the bottom 2. So there's a nice taupey sort of silvery purple shade. It's got a bit of sparkle to it, a little bit of brightness. And then I've got this shimmery, again, sort of satin dark purple. Now, you would know that there is a dark purple in the Lorac Pro 1. So it is a shimmery purple called Deep Purple. It's this one here, but it's very, very, very dark. So I'll compare it. This one is almost black, and oh, and it's crumbling everywhere. It's just crumbled all over my desk, but it's very, very black, and I find it a little bit intimidating to wear on a daily basis because it is so black, whereas this one is more of a plum. And I just feel like it's a little bit more user-friendly. So I have worn this a few times. So there you go. The difference is, yeah, it's quite obvious. I'm going for more autumn looks at the moment, and this one is just a little bit nicer and less sort of dramatic to add on the like the lower lash line or the outer corner. So that purple that's the reason I've wanted to introduce, you know, this trio, is because it's just a different dimension to the shades that I currently have. Also, the purple in this Lorac one is really messy and really flaky, and I'm worried that at any time it's going to break. So that's a reason to not want to touch it. There is also a purple in this palette, the Lorac 2, but it's a matte. So even though it is quite nice, again, it's quite gray. It doesn't quite have that warmth that this one has, which I quite prefer. So this one I find, let's get a little bit more, hang on. There we go. So again, this one is just a little bit more user-friendly and a little bit more what I'm after at the moment. Similarly, the middle shade is just a nice sort of bright, everyday, cool-toned shimmer shade, whereas I don't really feel like the Lorac palettes offer that. So this shade is a nice sort of, again, taupey, sort of sparkly, slightly purpley shade, and it offers something really nice that these other palettes don't. So I might wipe this off and we'll do some more comparisons. All right, so this is the MAC shade here. So it's just a nice soft sort of purpley silvery taupe shade. If I get the chrome shade from the Lorac Pro 2, you can see that this is just a little bit more gray and a little bit darker, so it's not as bright. And then Pewter I really like. Oh, look at that. I just gouged my thumb in the black. Look, if I hit pan on the black by gouging my thumb in it, good, because I'm not going to use it any other way. Pewter is another sort of coolie shade, and I do really like it, but again, it doesn't have that sort of brightness that this shade has. So here we go. It's just a nice brown, but it is very different. So I feel like I've been missing a bright shade that I can just sort of chuck on the lid really, really quickly. So that's why I decided to introduce that little trio. All right, and then the last mini palette I decided to include is one that I actually really love, and I don't want it gone from my collection, so I'm a little bit torn. This one I don't really use, so if it's gone from my collection, fine, so be it. I won't really miss it, but I do feel like it adds something to the palettes I currently have and can make it a little bit easier to want to delve into these other shades if I can sort of mix it with something that's a little bit brighter and a little bit easier to wear. So that's why I've introduced that one. This one, I've introduced it because I feel like these two palettes are missing tones that I'm sort of wanting at the moment, and this palette offers it. I love the quality, and it's a palette that I know I can use often because this is my palette that I take traveling. Now, there's a pandemic, I'm not going to travel. I haven't traveled for a couple of years now, and I'm probably not going to travel for a while, so I thought I may as well use this and give it some love. If I don't hit pan on it or I don't use it up, so be it, but it's a nice way to encourage me to use these sort of like mattes and shimmers, mixing it with something that I think is a little bit more fun and interesting. So anyway, this is the Tarteist Pro To Go palette. It contains 6 shades and they're 0.9 grams each. So they're not the smallest ones, but I have used this quite a lot because again, I've gone traveling with it. I've used it. It's been to Vietnam with me, it's been to Japan with me, it's been to Bali with me. So I love this little palette, and my battery's gonna go, so I'll be back. So what I love about this palette, besides the fact that it's adding different tones that I don't have in these Lorac palettes, there's some warm tones in here, but they're generally quite neutral. The warmest is probably the gold, whereas what I love about this is you have this beautiful sort of burnt orange matte, which I've been using quite a lot. It's really, really nice to blend out, again, like the gold or the garnet in this palette. I feel like at the moment I'm blending some warm shades with cool shades, and it sort of mutes it down, stops it being a sort of autumn and, you know, that warm look that I'm currently vibing with. So adding this palette in means I can use this gorgeous sort of burnt, sort of browny orange shade to complement some of the nice warm tones in here. Also, again, it adds a bit of brightness. I've got this more champagne gold, which I don't really have a champagne gold in this palette. I've got a yellow gold. I've got some nude shades that are sort of a bit lackluster and look a little bit more satin, whereas this one here, it's a nice bright highlight shade, which I think I'm lacking in this palette or these palettes. And again, it's just a really beautiful, beautiful quality gold. If I compare it to like bronze, light bronze, like this is, compared to it, it's so like lackluster. You can see what I mean? Like that's Lorac and that's Tarte. So I just feel like these are a lot more fun and just a bit more, this adds a bit more texture and a different color story. We have this shade Dominate, which is this beautiful cranberry shade that I just do not have in any of these palettes. Again, really, really nice for this time of the year. It's just a little bit more berry toned than Garnet, which is what I was talking about before. So Garnet is more orange and this one's more, I don't know if you can see it there, but there's a different tone, adds a different tone. So even though I don't want this palette gone because I really love it, I think it adds a nice element to these existing palettes and will encourage me to use these palettes more paired with this. So if I don't hit pan on these or use it up by the end of the year, I'm fine with it, just as long as it encourages me to use the Lorac palettes more. So that's my goal with introducing these minis. Let me know if you're doing a project pan and how you're going with it. I know it can be hard. So yeah, if you're struggling with your palette, maybe introduce something that you do enjoy and it might encourage you to want to use the palette alongside it. So that's sort of something that I've enjoyed doing the last month. So that's my tip of the month. Anyway, guys, hopefully you enjoyed that and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.